100% human, right? I have a little presentation prepared. We'll see how much we get through it. Um, like I always say when I introduce these kind of things, this is a dialogue. It's not for me to kind of just hog the time here. So as we go through, if you want to make comments or whatever, you can put your hand up or just jump straight in, and we can have a dialogue as we move along. Yeah. So let me go and see, where's the presentation? I think this is it. Do we see it, hopefully?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right, so yeah, so what I want to start with actually about being 100% human is a little story in conjunction with the word home. Because I actually had a discussion with my son, who's actually on the call actually here. You'll see him, David Keating. You'll see him in the picture there. And he was here to visit us last week. And we decided to have a walk together. And I was asking him, where does he feel at home? And I was thinking he might say, you know, here where he originally was born and brought up, or where he lives now in Cologne. But actually he said to me, oh, actually I feel at home in here, in your body. And I thought that was really powerful because, you know, we have this feeling of, you know, humanness. Yeah. What does that actually mean? And by David describing, like, you know, this feeling of home in your body, yeah, that you could take it with you wherever you go, that's kind of really human beingness. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that story with you because I felt it kind of makes a good introduction about getting your, you know, sort of mind around this idea about what is 100% human and being human. Yeah. So if I start the presentation then on what do I think that could be, or how you can get to be more human, yeah, and reaching for this 100% humanness, I would say we start with the body, yeah. So is it working? Oh yeah, okay. So move body, yeah. So we're talking here about, you know, march for men, of course, but in reality we're talking about humans here. And moving your body is a really important part. And how Dad described, you know, this idea of connecting with your body and having it as your home and caring for it as your home, well, then you should really be thinking about some of the things you should be doing to, yeah, think about caring for that body. Yeah. So how do you do this? First and foremost, as most of us know who are coaches here, very powerful is the power of breathing.
Michael,
So,
we're just still seeing the title slide.
Okay, sorry. Now, there we go. You
got
see
it now? Yeah, I got it now, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I had my presentation on the wrong thing. Okay, so in terms of moving the body, breathing, you know, we have many different exercises in terms of breathing and connecting with ourselves. We've even practiced a number of them in our coaching and mentoring sessions on Friday. And I think, you know, really consciously, you know, connecting with your body is through the breath. So, you know, I would challenge people every day to think about that as they move along their day and be conscious from time to time in their breath. What I tend to do is, you know, have what I call also mini rituals, or also combining mini movement rituals, which is about, of course, moving your body, you know, physically. Because in doing that, you're giving it the care it deserves. And you're connecting with home, as my son would say. So thinking about moving, you know, and having these mini rituals can start off very, very simply. My son, for example, David, he's a sports expert, and he got me to kind of start a journey of doing small movement exercises in the morning for about 10 minutes. Now I'm up to about 45 minutes after about 3 months. And I can seriously tell you, I can feel the difference. Yeah. the combination, of course, of having these, what I would call mini exercises with the breath is what allows us to center our body and really feel, more this dynamic of being human, because, our body is the shell that holds us together. And so, another thing I try to encourage people, of course, because we're sitting so much, is thinking about mini movement rituals or exercises when we're all sitting here right in front of this Zoom, and getting up and moving around, and even having Zoom calls in a standing way as well. So I would challenge you to think about that in terms of moving your body. So if we move on, if I can get this to work, yes, okay, in terms of moving your mind, oh, come on, oh, it doesn't work, it goes too fast. One of the things I also talk about with people is, mind yourself, this idea of self-care, because, being self, probably, we all think about, well, what does that actually mean, for me? Well, it means feeling good inside your own body and your own mind. And we really do need to put ourselves first, in terms of self-talk, that inner speech, which we tend to create on a ongoing basis. Some scientists say that we actually, have about 10,000 different thoughts every day. So that's a lot of things going on in our minds. And we need to have a special connection with those thoughts in terms of our inner speak and our inner voice. So one of the exercises that I do in the morning is I look in the mirror and I say good morning to myself, and I smile, and I connect with that inner self every morning. It sounds kind of simple. It isn't as simple as it sounds. You do need to practice it. It's like brushing your teeth in the morning. If you get in the exercise of brushing your teeth every morning, you can get in the sort of ritual of connecting with yourself every morning and saying good morning. And that's a very powerful way to also begin your day. Another thing I challenge people on is about having mind hygiene and nourishment. What do I mean here? Well, what I mean here is really, if you think about what we sort of inject into our thoughts and into our inputs every day, in terms of social media, in terms of television, in terms of all these different things, we really need to think about, is that all good content? Is it healthy? Is it happy? I mean, if we think about COVID times, everybody's talking about hygiene and social distancing. I would challenge people to have social media distancing, and at least start and end their day without any social media. So that's really the first hour and the last hour of every day. Stay away from your smartphone. Just don't use it. Have that discipline, or create that discipline, to have a clear mind first thing in the morning and a clear mind last thing at night before you go to sleep. So you give yourself and your conscious, and then of course your subconscious mind as you sleep, a good foundation for the night. So I'll move on then to me being me moments. What am I talking about here? Yeah, really, it's about this idea of activities which allow you to center yourself. And many people have many different activities. It can be any form of sport, which allows you to really, center in on your own self. It can be, for me, which is going into nature, and taking a nice walk with my dog, and being very observant of what's happening around me, and it sounds, again, easy to do, but it is about practice. It is about actually using all of your senses, and really, like for me, when I'm out in nature, actually smelling, hearing, even tasting, let's say the wind or the air, what's around me, and really coming to a sort of focus within myself. Because again, what that does for you is it creates that connection, and you're building ultimately a very healthy relationship with yourself. Because in terms of self and relationships, that is the most important thing to do. So if I move then to moving relationships and how, you know, we can create better relationships with others. Of course, we start with ourselves first, and that would be a great way, what I'm talking about in terms of your body and your mind, to do these things. This will allow you to create a closer relationship with yourself. And then what I would actually think about is, yeah, sort of a coming together stages. Okay, so I have, I'm not going to go into detail here, but I give you sort of some ideas around creating relationships, first with yourself, but then with others, in terms of the 5 stages you see here: initiating, experimenting, intensifying, integrating, and bonding. But one of the things that I give people as a tip in terms of working on relationships and moving this humanness with other people is the 40-20-40 rule, which is about, you know, 40% preparation for something, 20% actually implementing something, and 40% kind of follow up. So this is a kind of rule you can use in many forms of life, but you can also use it in terms of relationship creation and caring. And even, you know, thinking about when you're having a meeting with somebody, particularly now that it's online, yeah, that you prepare for that meeting in your own mind about how you want to make it to be in a positive, how would you say it, experience between you two. Yeah, and that would be, you know, the 40% effort that you should put into that. The 20% is actually the event itself, and the 40% is actually the follow-up. So what do I do now that we've had this meeting, this creation of a relationship of some format? What do I do to make it effective and sustaining? So 40-20-40. So maybe then, as I move then to some key success factors of connecting, of relationships and being 100% human, one of the things that I talk about quite often is the idea of connection and this word togetherness. And you think about, okay, what does that mean, togetherness? Well, what I tend to do is I ask people to do an exercise, and we can maybe do this right here, where I'd ask you to think about using, and I think some of you might have already done this already with me, where you use 2 fingers from 2 hands and show me a symbol which looks like togetherness. What does that look like? So maybe for those who've already done an exercise, maybe you wouldn't do it, but for others, maybe. Okay, so we're seeing some circles. We're seeing nice hands together. So remember, it's 2 fingers just from 2 hands. Yes, okay, so, all right, nice. So if we see here, we have a lot of these kind of connections, which are, you know, showing a bind, yeah, of some format. And if you think about that, that's the actual essence of creating a connection, and this word togetherness, yeah. It's about really, yeah, connecting together, you know, creating a bond with somebody, or connecting a bond with yourself in terms of being 100% human. And thinking, okay, what are the things I can actually physically, mentally, spiritually, facts, do to create this bond with myself? The other thing which you need to do is commit. You know, nothing ever happens unless you make a commitment. So if you want to be, you know, striving to be more human, you need to make a commitment with yourself to do that. Yeah, to have exercises, to center yourself for every day, to be disciplined, you know, to say hello in the mirror every morning. That's a commitment. You got to make that commitment with yourself. And finally, you know, accountability, which is also a really important step. I would probably say it is the most important step in terms of the 3, which is, you know, you are accountable, yes, to yourself, but you make that accountability public. So, you know, you have a partner, you have somebody in a family situation where you've discussed this idea of maybe being 100% human and what you're trying to do that. And you share that with somebody to say, hey, look, hold me accountable. I want to do this, and I want to see a return of investment, but if I don't get you to hold me accountable, you know, maybe I won't make it. So this is also the idea of togetherness, because, you know, any form of change, even for your own person, you do need people around you to help you. Yeah. So I really would recommend that. Right. So moving along then, you know, how do we do this? Again, I talk about, you know, mind ourselves, which is like the we care. So if you're in a relationship with somebody, you're, you know, wanting to build this dynamic of being more human in your relationship, whether it's a, you know, a love relationship or a business relationship, you need to find, again, that bond and that commitment and that accountability. So those things are going to come all the time up in terms of building really effective human relationships with other people. Yeah, they really are the three key steps: bond, you know, commitment, and accountability. So I won't go into that because that's going too much. But last but not least, what I wanted to do here was show you a quote from Mother Teresa, which I find very powerful in terms of, you know, I can do things you cannot, you can do things I cannot, together we can do great things. Okay, so, you know, if you think about our world around us, there's many different things that I'm good at, but there are many good things that you are good at, but together we can do great things. So I challenge people also as they, you know, progress in their paths of life, whatever their reason of being is, to really search out those co-conspirators or co-partners to really find, you know, success together. Yeah. And as you know, my motto for my company is better together, together better, because genuinely it is the way to do it. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. But what I wanted to do now was kind of think about, for us here as a small little Ireland Together group, yeah, what could we have as a mini team exercise in terms of thinking about being more human, but creating relationships inside our Ireland Together community. So, any suggestions?
Here in the moment, Michael, I think the one-to-ones is obviously a very good way of building and getting to know other people, but I'm not sure. And again, typically that's breakout rooms in a session like this. That's one thing, I guess, where you break the group into a smaller group where you can have a more specific conversation, I guess, and getting to know another person. But I'm not sure, you know, if that's what you're looking for right here. That's just one suggestion, but I'm sure there's others.
Yeah, we've done some exercises before, and it's partly my bias because I'm not that good at networking, but you know, where we ask people to do value-based network. So we ask people not to talk about what they do or what they want, but we ask people to talk about who they are and what they value. And we did it particularly, it was interesting in where one person said to me, it was down in Limerick, I did it, and they said, you know, this is amazing because Americans come over to events here. So they work for an American company and they've guys talking about hurling and rugby and where their cousin went to school. And they said, it's just lost on the Americans and they just don't, they've no reference point. And so, you know, in Ireland, we look for the physical connection. Where'd you go to school? What team do you support? And then we try and build from there. Whereas a lot of times they go the other way. So, I mean, if you know, and a lot of what you're saying there, Michael, kind of resonates with that you get your value driven connection and you work back from there. And I don't know if, you know, within Ireland Together, you know, we might suggest at some stage an exercise like that for maybe, you know, on the Tuesday, Thursday, you know, networking calls that we tweak it 1 week or 2 weeks to do something like that. So
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea, Stephen. We will certainly use that, I think, in terms of moving forward.
yeah, and it doesn't have to be too heavy, you know, that's, you
No,
know,
exactly.
people don't have to, you know, open up their heart, you know, or their religious beliefs or their whatever. It can be, you know, yeah.
I just think,
Yes.
Michael, that accountability piece is huge, because what I've been starting to do is just saying to people what I'm going to do, because then I definitely have to do it, right? Because then I can't go back and not do it, because I've already promised it to myself out loud and I've said it to someone else. So even if there's something with that, I think that's already happening quite a lot in the group, is when you actually talk about what you value and what's important to you, what's your habits. So by saying it in the group, it holds you accountable as well to stick to that. So I think that's been happening naturally already in the group, kind of. But you know, is there something around that we could do? Is it even, you know, an accountability piece of what is your main goal this week? You know, what is something that you want to implement this week to be more human this week?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So based on my own experience, I think the togetherness there are different levels of togetherness, and there's also a possibility that we might not be together, and understanding that it's okay not to be together. You don't have to be together with everybody, because you might not share, you know, the same value and the same business kind of drive, or there could be, you know, people are competing for business on this platform as well, and you can be together learning, but you don't have to be together you know, working on the same clients, for example, or, you know, it needs to be case by case basis. And I think there'd be more kind of education around the concept of togetherness, is when it's okay not to be together, and telling yourself it's okay, it didn't work out, or tell yourself it's okay to be together for a while, just for this particular project, and then you don't have to be together for a long time. So they're just like, it's hard for me to articulate I'm just kind of going over. I think it's just more thinking and more education on this, and people can share their experience as well, that it's okay, you know, friends come and go, business connections come and go, and you can try new projects and then may not work out, and sometimes you try a project with somebody who worked out great, and just sharing these successes and failures, or it kind of makes people to be more relaxed about things. I don't think we need to force anything to be together either. I think it's just happens naturally.
And I think it's about separate, what Stephen, I think, mentioned there, Jing, on that. It's about disconnecting maybe the value person from the business that they're in and the labels associated with those.
Yes.
So I think that it's exactly, you know, what the value could be of using a forum like this to connect on the personal level, setting aside your label around what occupation or business or what other agenda you've got going on, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just having that very clear view in terms of, we value the person, you know, have that respect for everybody, even though you disagree on certain things, but you see the good and the valuable input from this particular person and their expertise and experience. Just be humble about what you don't know. And
Michael, I just like to say, and just kind of to add to Jing's point, I'm not a regular here in the Ireland Together community. I just really enjoyed your presentation. And you said at a time, you said, it sounds simple. And I was thinking, it is simple, because I mean, my greatest lesson over lockdown has been, I've always been chasing more and more, like doing more courses, more certifications, more complexity. But the answer to complexity is never more complexity. It's simplicity. So I really appreciated that. When you mentioned mind hygiene, something stuck out to me. Living in rural Tipperary, we don't have the best Wi-Fi. And one weekend, the internet crashed. And we were without it the whole weekend. And that Monday morning, my wife and I looked at each other like something was different. Like, what's going on? Our heads were totally clear because there was no noise, there was no interference. And to Jing's point, what I've come to realize is that connection is our natural state. It's just what gets in the way of connection, what the interference is. Like I like to say in my company that high performance is capacity minus contamination or minus interference. So how can we cut that out? And just to kind of tie it together, I read a book recently, The Art of Impossible by Stephen Kotler. It's a New York Times bestseller, I think, at the moment. And he talks about 22 flow triggers to help drive executives into the flow state of performance. The common denominator that unites all of them is that they drive your attention into the present moment. That's the level, you know, and in the present moment, connection is the factory default setting. That's what I'm seeing. Like state of mind with my clients is the most important and least understood business variable as far as I'm concerned. And like, I'm always interested in something I'd like to talk about in terms of your mini exercises is what other people feel is their own portal to the present moment where high performance is natural, you know, where we cut out the fog of the thought storm of the future and the past. And I like to see the mind as not an RPM in the car, but a TPM, thoughts per minute. The lower the thoughts, the higher the performance. So I'd love to talk to anyone about how they get present throughout the day at any time.
Thomas, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Can I just comment on Thomas's voice as well? Is it me? Like, do you have experiencing running podcast or something? Because your voice is just, it's so soothing.
It's a common Tipperary accent.
Is it? My husband from Tipperary as well. He doesn't sound like that.
I don't have a podcast, and thank you very much for saying
You should
that.
have a podcast, for God's sake, that kind of a voice.
But I do have one coming out soon called The Human Behind the Leader, hence why I came here. So
now we're talking.
yeah, and
okay, Thomas, I think we're going to have to talk soon.
okay.
Yeah, and like I agree with Thomas's about the obstacles. I think like in behavior science and psychology, it's kind of removing the friction. So there's a lot of friction in our experience. The more we can remove them, the quicker we can get there and the better experience we have. So it's identifying those frictions, whether you're using a service, whether you're checking a website, or whether you're doing something or doing the design, there are frictions. Like if we have a bad experience using the app, we're not going to use it again. So these are kind of, or, you know, we're not having a good experience. Sorry, I do a lot of talking, so I let someone else do a bit more.
Ava, you're smiling. Come join us.
No, I'm listening intently, and I totally agree with Jing on Thomas's voice. I was just cruising along there, listening to that voice. No, your presentation was really good, and I love Stephen's idea of networking when it's all about the value and who is the person rather than what is the person. So I think that's really, really good. And I think what's successful is to get a right balance, because if you're networking, there's always going to be an element of business in there, and you want to know what the person does. Can you help them? Can they help you? You know, we know that's about networking, but if we could balance it more where we learn more about who the person is. And I think, I don't know who mentioned it, was it you, Thomas, that the Americans don't get, you know, when they network, they don't get us Irish talking about the GAA, you know, the weather, and that can take up an awful lot of our conversations, which is, we're actually quite natural at that. And we do find where we're comfortable with the person by the small talk at the beginning of the conversation, but maybe we just need to do a little bit more on that piece when we're having a one-to-one with people. And another point you mentioned about our internal, very early on, you mentioned about our internal conversation. you know, how we speak to ourselves. And I was brought to a standstill last week when I found myself saying the following, right? I think a lot of the people here might sympathize with the COVID stone, right? As in, we've all put on a bit of weight in this year, you know. I found myself saying, I do not want to know what you weigh. I'm like, oh my God, why would you say that to yourself, you know? It kind of stopped me in my tracks, you know, and I feel I have a good relationship with myself. I don't quite look in the mirror every day and say, hello, Eva, how are you? But, you know, I don't tear myself apart about things, but I found myself saying that. I don't want to know what you weigh. It just stopped me. It arrested me, really. And I think we can all probably have a little bit of, think about that a little bit more and be kinder to ourselves, you know. So they're my contributions.
Very nice. Stephen, you're nodding. McDonald.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that's been said so far, and it's a lot of it. The number of topics that we've already discussed, and like one of the things that I've found in particularly the last 6 months, that have allowed me to grow my, I say, capability, capacity, and wanting of more human contact and more human interaction, is just changing my my relationship with technology. Like that for me has been the single greatest gift I've given myself in the last number of months. Like the phone now switches itself off at 8 o'clock in the evening, and it switches itself back on at 8 o'clock in the morning. And like the great thing about that, and again, it goes back to as you know, one of my loves, which is habits. I don't have to think about that. It happens automatically. So now I'm finding myself actually having more space and capacity, like you were saying earlier on, that capacity to listen and to hear myself, rather than having to fill that space with a habit of conversation that I feel I must get involved in.
Yeah, no, it's great. Don, what are you thinking?
Yeah, my apologies. I had to leave their room there.
No
We were
worries.
having a row with Irish Life Health, and that was the call. So I had to just go away. I was only being human. So my apologies.
No problem.
So we just got to the point of switching off social media, going to bed, I think, and a period of being unplugged.
Yes.
And so I missed there. So I totally agree with that, except for one thing, which is to my detriment or benefit. I'm not quite sure. I started listening to radio on the phone. So you end up with the your phone, you have an earphone plugged into the radio, and I listen to a lot of radio stations through the phone because you get so many more and stuff. So you do find yourself in this slight dilemma that the phone is actually near you, and I have to work out a way of not actually looking at the phone, even though you can listen to the radio at the same time. So, but I'm with you entirely as the rationale. So I actually don't, you're quite right. It gets stuck under the pillow actually. So that is okay, I guess. And I'm just listening to whatever's coming in my right ear. And that I do find, by the way, radio is hugely beneficial in escapism, particularly the radio stations that have drama and documentaries and podcasts and all the things we listen to that aren't newsy. I do try and not listen to news, which unfortunately is mostly bad news most of the time, and get away from it that way. So, and all the other things you mentioned earlier in the presentation, Michael, I certainly buy into attaching to nature, and that's it. So excuse me for just briefly catching up, but that's
no problem.
That's where I'd be. Yeah.
Louise.
Like, I'm totally catching up here because I was half an hour late, so I actually missed the presentation. So I am loving, and I wanted to join it, and I got caught on a call, and I think it's that moment of where, do I just embrace this? Do I cut them short, or what do I do? And that's, I suppose, what you're all talking about is the mental health. I'm terrible about turning off technology. yeah, for everything. Like first thing you do, wake up in the morning, last thing I go to bed. I know, Michael, you've given me lots of talks on this. I do take moments for mindfulness, but I even use an app for that. So there's an app for everything. And very similar to Don, I don't look at my phone when I'm walking and I listen to podcasts, but I'm still using technology. But I don't refer to it because it's in my pocket and I'm walking. So unless I really, really hate the podcast, I don't take it out of my pocket without unless I need to change it. So I do switch off during that, but switching off the actual technology, like really?
Yeah, really.
Uh,
Thomas, I don't know if you were there when Thomas explained the story that his Wi-Fi didn't work for the weekend.
Yeah, I heard it.
Yeah, okay, so.
Oh no, I heard that.
Yeah, so think about that.
But there is another part is that I would also be very good if I was with somebody, I would never ever look at technology. That's one thing. I when I'm with somebody or I'm in something, I'm engaged at that moment. And I think that's really important. So I know people pick up their phone or they're watching. Mine would be totally off, upside down, and I'm engaged and very present in listening and in engagement with people. So it doesn't distract me from that. It distracts me when I'm doing work, all the million of other things that I could be working on all the time, but not so much with people. So there's a different balance as well. But before I get given out to any more, I think you need to pass on to somebody else because I know Michael's just ready to kill me here any moment.
No, it's okay. Hey, it's all about self-discipline and self-control and self-motivation and accountability. Yeah, no, David, maybe you want to join us. This is my son, what he's been listening to.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, David.
Yeah, I've never been on a Zoom meeting like this. It's pretty cool. Yeah, what was I thinking? I really liked Thomas' idea on the present moment. So like in high performance, well, in a high performance occasion, it's good to be in the present moment. And for me, I found that just focusing on the breath is really helpful in doing this. Just to stay in the present moment and or focusing on my own body, and at the same time it's a weird combination of being within oneself and being in the present moment and the actual situation and not letting your mind go everywhere. That definitely helps, but I guess everyone has their own little tips and tricks to stay in the moment. Another thought I had was on the commitment part. I also think of it as consistency, and maybe a little exercise you guys could do or we could do is for me, I guess consistency is hard. To do breathing exercises every morning or do physical exercise every morning is hard to do, and for everyone. And just sharing this experience of this being hard for everyone, I think really helps to see, okay, everyone struggles with doing things in the morning or being consistent. So yeah, that really helps to share these experiences and show, okay, I'm human. I try to be consistent, but I can't always be, and so is everyone else. And that just helps to be more consistent, to see others have the same struggles. So yeah, those were my thoughts.
Thank you so much, David. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's been my champion to get me moving my body more in this COVID year, so I don't have this COVID stone, as you called it, Eva. Yeah, no, great. So no, I think this is great, some great ideas here about, you know, how we can use these platforms to come together and create more human dimension in our meetings. You know, also, you know, of course, Zoom is yeah, it's great to be able to have this vehicle to be able to come together, but it is difficult to kind of get a feeling of resonance over a machine. You know, when we had a physical contact, you know, you can do that quite easily. However, what I would say on my experience is if you really want to, you can create resonance even in this kind of environment. Yeah, it is more difficult for sure. Yeah, but it is about sharing and you know, being actually quite vulnerable, you know. So even like David telling there about his struggle to be consistent and to do this every day and sharing those kind of stories, it is a powerful way to actually connect and resonate with other humans, yeah, in a, you know, in a method like we're online, yeah, and we're not actually physically with each other. So again, also being more human is about being vulnerable and sharing those stories and feeling, you know, okay, you know, this is part of my humanness, to be vulnerable and to share stories where I know I fucked up, you know. And one of the ideas we've had now is also to have what I have participated in, fuck up sessions, yeah. These are events which were started about 5 years ago from people who created startups, and they came together and they've had sessions where they talk about their fuck ups, yeah, in a sort of a light, you know, kind of storytelling way, but in a way it's sharing vulnerabilities, and people get aware and feel, okay, you know, then my fuck up is not as bad as well, yeah, so come on, let's all fuck up together. You know, and in that way you learn. So, you know, that idea of togetherness in learning from doing things which maybe you haven't done so well, where you fucked up. So that's another idea.
Yeah, yeah. There's another thing which I think you've mentioned before, Michael, and that is where there's an opportunity to do something for somebody else. And in my little locality here now, I'm living now next to an elderly lady. And it turns out the people who were in this house before us and herself didn't have a good relationship at all. In fact, she went out of her way to say, "We're so glad you're here. It's been awful. It's been this, that, and the other." And she's an absolutely lovely lady. And there's steps outside the house. Anyway, cut long story short, I've been putting out her bin whenever possible, because there's steps down this, and I'm talking about 15 steps up and down from her house. So the thing about that is, who benefits more? Just getting the opportunity to do that when it's so easy for me to do it, and seeing her reaction to it and how much it means to her. I get a lot more out of it than she does, I'm absolutely certain. And that's one thing. And there's another little story I want to share, which is massively relevant to Ireland Together. And this has never happened to me before. But last Friday, I'm telling this now, this is my own humanness, if you don't mind, because you're inviting us. So I'm laying myself out before you all. I'm saying that last Friday, I came along to the St. Patrick's little kind of get-together thing on a Friday, and late, because I hadn't realized the time in it. It doesn't matter. Came in slightly, and I sat there like a dumbbell for, you know, part of it, because it was terrific, and people were enjoying it and doing very well. But then in the end, I kind of felt, gosh, I'll have to tell a joke here because everybody else is telling jokes. And I told 2 shocking jokes. I felt awful afterwards. They weren't good. They were like the worst and second worst you could possibly tell. I said, what the hell did you do that for? Why did you do that? Was just stupid. You should have said nothing and laughed and smiled and enjoyed it, which I was. But afterwards I felt, you absolute dumbbell, you didn't have to say anything. Just enjoy it, and being there was enough. So that was the fragility or frailty, if you like, of feeling I need to do something here. So they're 2 kind of mini examples of stuff that happens in a week, I suppose. So it makes me feel very connected sometimes. And then I'm humbled in another way that stuff happens. And you learn about your stuff. So I learned a lot about myself in the last week over these 2 little things, oddly, because of how much it means to Nolene, who's literally, you know, probably 10 foot the far side of the wall that I'm on the other side of, and then that other thing last Friday. So I find this whole thing of lockdown has been very enlightening in lots of ways, in odd reactions that we have sometimes that we mightn't have always acted the same way prior to this prolonged period of lockdown. Anyway, that's me now.
Don, I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing your star.
Yeah, well,
fantastic. Anyway. You're moving away from the fear of being human to confidence of being human.
Yeah. I'm a very reactive type person, and occasionally, and you should never do this in a radio studio. When all the radio stations I was in, there was at least 2 or 3 of them had a big sign on the wall: engage brain before opening mouth. Occasionally that just doesn't happen. and you sort of say, what the, anyway, so I've discovered that the only way is for me to be me, actually, and occasionally it gets me into trouble, and then I feel like, I've just said. But generally, the biggest thing for me now, and living in this locality now in Hoth, is the benefit of being able to help people and just do stuff locally in a slightly older population around here. That means a lot. And so, yeah, I'm definitely have a bit of a gratitude attitude at the moment, Michael. And people like you have also helped in this. And of course, Louise, who I know going back a while, and Colin I met most recently. You all add into offering a platform here to discuss these things in a different type of format that wasn't always available to us. So these micro meetings, macro meetings, sessions, call them what you want, give a chance for discussions that we would never, ever otherwise have the opportunity to have. I'm pretty sure about that. And oddly, would I say this if I stand in a little room in Abbey Street talking to Mr. Pitcher there, as they did in 2018, and have this type of discussion? Probably not, because there's a benefit in having something between you and the other people somehow. I don't know how that works, but it's you tend to feel more comfortable getting stuff off your chest. And I love that, to be honest, both from other people and occasionally from myself.
It's like the Zoom filter, as we call it.
Kind of, yeah.
I also think it's partially down, you're sitting in your home. So there's always that comfort factor of sitting in your own home for a start, which will certainly, look, I've seen, you said you wouldn't have these conversations. I think you might have these conversations with very, very like-minded people, but getting the absolute eclectic mix that we have within Ireland together is where magic happens, I think. Yeah. And I think that's where the big difference is, what we're doing now in comparison to what you normally get. Because if you were doing this, as you said, with the LinkedIn local that you did before with Stephen, those are a one click or one set of small networking group that will always be at the same thing. Whereas this is really just gathering a completely different mix of people from all corners of, you've got Germany here, you've got all of Ireland over.
So Prairie, I mean,
well, we have to forgive something.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's the benefit of what you're doing. And that has evolved as well. It's not all businessy. It's also support, conversation, learning, and discovery, all in a mix.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of the way the world is for the last year. Like, we don't know what can tip us over an edge one day, which normally wouldn't. We don't know how always, like what David was saying there a few moments ago. I tried to put my feet on the floor when I wake up in the morning, because I heard in a podcast that today is going to be a good day, because you're reminding yourself to think of that for the day, and set your tone. But you don't know where it's a vulnerable, even when you think you're strong most of the time. And then it can take one comment from somebody to set you completely in a different path. And then, how did that affect me so much today? And then you're surrounded by people when you join in these kind of things, even if you come in late, like me, sorry about that, Michael, but you join into a safe environment that people are here to talk and listen and trust. And that doesn't always exist even in the real world. So I think it's just been incredible. Like Colin said, this eclectic mix of people who, but also shows what we needed, that we all need it together as well. And we're not afraid to say that, and that takes strength. So,
yeah.
And then you realize it's all been recorded.
Yeah.
It wasn't until after I said my little piece and felt so vulnerable afterwards that I looked up and go, oh my God, this has been recorded. But I actually go back to Colin, what you said earlier. I think it's very true that you're at home. And, you're not rushing from one meeting to another. You're not, dressed up, wearing your heels on, going to a network event. And it kind of does really give you that feeling of comfortableness, if there is such a word, in this environment, and that you do kind of reveal vulnerabilities a little bit easier. But also, Don, going back to what you said, I really love the what you said, listen, this is just the way I am. So you just have to be yourself. And sometimes when I'm on calls or whatever, like I'll reveal something like today, and, you know, I can berate myself for it for a little bit. And then I just think, yeah, but it's part of who you are. It's just what you do. And if you start arresting yourself every time you're going to reveal something that could entertain or educate or whatever it is that it does, but it's the part of how you communicate. It's part of my personality. There's no point in berating yourself about it. It's just the way that you are, you know.
Yeah, I think so.
Then
Yeah.
you're absolutely striving to be 100% human.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Because isn't there, Michael, isn't there a paradox in the idea of being present? And sorry, just on a tangent, I think maybe we might talk again about creating an hour like this just around how do you become present and how do you let go of what was happening in the past and all that kind of thing that David was talking about. And that's, you know, maybe just talk the mechanics of how we do that. But that's, look, we can come back to that. But isn't there a paradox in the idea of being present, that it's the presentism that actually recreates what Colin is talking about and Eva is talking about there, that, you know, that physical safety that gives you that psychological safety, that actually you can recreate that in being fully present, because you're creating your own, you know, psychological safety. You're creating your own emotional nest. It's what Colin was kind of referring to, that idea that if you're at home and you're feeling safe in these other areas, you can be vulnerable in one part of the interaction. And I think if we understand presentism fully, we can understand that, you know, paradoxically, being vulnerable and open actually creates a greater safety for yourself, because you're letting go of the need, you know, to portray whatever character you feel you should portray and to be, you know, evaluated by other people's needs and all that kind of thing. So it's an interesting paradox.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I challenge people on is actually by being yourself, you know, in this vulnerability, what you're talking about, Stephen, you're absolutely zapping your energy and not sapping it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You're zapping it. You're actually, you know, you're giving yourself energy, which actually creates more healthiness inside your own being, and you will be less sick. I guarantee you. You know, you will be more healthy.
It's really hard to be 10 people at the same time, right? It's much easier to be one. Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I was just
Michael, I have to jump off, so thank you so much.
Stephen, yeah, you're welcome.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thomas.
Thank you, but Michael, thank you. I was just typing. Thank you so much for hosting today. And even though I'm late, I'm very grateful, and I'm glad that I stopped in. So thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you, Louise. Yes,
Thanks,
indeed.
Louise.
Okay. Bye-bye. So, Thomas, you were saying?
Yeah, I was saying I just love where Ava and Dawn and then Stephen were pointing with the word presentism. And I mean, just to Don's original point, what I see more and more now in our trainings is that the power of vulnerability cannot be underestimated. I've seen CEOs who come in and they give presentations on their mistakes and their past history and where they failed to try and connect with people, and works to a point. But what I've come to see for myself as well is you can't plan vulnerability. It happens in the moment, in times when you have to make a choice if you're going to be vulnerable. And when you are, everyone else connects with that because they see a little bit of themselves in your mistake as well. So I just love the direction everyone's pointing. And with regard to authenticity, I mean, it's just essential. There's a book, I'm sure many of you have read it, which the name is evading me. Let me see. Mindset by Carol Dweck. And she talks about the CEO disease in it, which is a core symptom of the fixed mindset. And essentially, a person gets into a role of power, and they try and act like they believe that role should be. So how much of their mental bandwidth goes towards fulfilling a presupposed version of an executive? But if that percentage use of the brain falls away, well, then you have full capacity left to be yourself because everyone else is taken. So that's all I wanted to say, but I'm really enjoying this conversation.
I love that, Thomas. I'm actually reading that book at the moment. and it's been sitting there. I'm slowly getting through it because I have so much lectures to get through. But it's brilliant, and it's so simple, the language, where I think you hear so much about the growth mindset now and how to be vulnerable and how to connect. So people feel like when they talk about it and they are perceived in that way, then that's a growth mindset. But actually, it's just kind of giving that perception that you do have a growth mindset because you have these certain beliefs, or you speak that language. But that's not really what it's about. It's about actually having the growth mindset in the time when you need to address it. And I think in companies, when you're talking about those CEO talks, it's when they probably see something that works and they want to be vulnerable. But like you say, it's not always something that's planned. And I think it's, do you want to use certain language to promote yourself in a way or to advertise something, or do you actually want to do the work on yourself? That's two completely different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Michael, just getting back to the original question and going connecting, I think, it goes back to what you mentioned earlier right at the beginning, is breathing and the breath. And it's a powerful way of connecting just in silence. Just don't do anything, just in the presence of the group that's here, 2 or 3 minutes of just breathing and connecting. That breathing and being quiet and still is a great way, maybe a more powerful way of connecting without doing anything else, speaking or having any other means of mechanism or of connecting. Just that silence is a great connector, I think, and breathing.
Very powerful. It's very powerful. And I find if you use it when I do use it on a regular basis, if you're out of your comfort zone, or there's something in your body telling you like that things aren't right, or you're under pressure or whatever, to just step back, take a couple of minutes and concentrate on your breathing. It's incredibly powerful, and you can actually feel the energy, going down through your body, and it's just a case of grounding, and and then you're good to go again, because it's almost like it helps you rationalize where you're at, and that it's just a challenge that you can rise to, or whatever the right answer is, but it'll come from those couple of minutes out.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, it's not only the individuals, but it's the group, actually. It's the whole group. Somehow, whoever it works, whether it's quantum mechanics or whatever,
right.
It spreads. It's infectious as well. So there's personal benefit, but there's group benefit. I'm convinced of as well,
I really agree, Seamus, because I see that when you're in a session with people and you do a breathing exercise, that energy in the room really gets aligned, and you're all in this certain headspace where, oh, that wasn't me. You're all in this space where you all have more headspace and you are connected. And then if someone comes in late after that, you see the difference, because you don't always realize it when you're in that group. But when someone comes in after, you can see that their head, and you see that online. You don't have to be in a room together. So I completely agree with being able to make those connections. And I think it's all about the intention. People really make an intentional connection now. It's not just about showing up in a room and sitting there and just being present. That's important too. But now you actually are intentional. You're more aware of what is happening. It can be really exhausting, but you're more aware of everyone in the room because they're all kind of facing, face front. So it creates an awareness of yourself as well. But it's really that intention that when you share something, you want to connect with the group. And it doesn't matter, at the end of the day, if you say something stupid or you get embarrassed, like no one's gonna really remember that. Like it's just you, it's in your own head. It's not really that important because we all do that. Like I get embarrassed all the time and I would think about it after, and then I feel like, in a week's time, I've forgotten about it. It doesn't matter anymore.
Actually, what's fun to do, Jennifer, is to actually set a target for how many times you should be embarrassing yourself every week. Make a target.
Do my best.
Exactly. 20, say, okay, I want to embarrass myself 20 times this week.
That means I'm learning.
Exactly.
growth mindset.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for all this discussion. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, great session,
I see
Michael.
we're way over, which is great. It shows that everybody's enjoying. So I think we'll have to have a follow-up session.
Yeah, brilliant.
There's been some great feedback here and some great ideas. So I think I will take my notes, you know, my crazy mind map notes, and put something together. And I think we'll reconvene sometime soon if everybody agrees.
Yeah, brilliant.